Welcome to the Have More Fun podcast. In this episode, I talk with Kirk Cameron about kids and cell phones, how his family sets healthy boundaries with technology, and Kirk tells a ridiculously cute story about how he met his wife.
I think everyone smiles when they hear you say, I have the all mom freak out moment and marching off to the garage. And then it's been 27 years later, which is something like 270 in Hollywood years, right?
Totally. That's impressive.
Because the moment of freedom becomes bad for them, that's when a parent needs to step in. Other actors who got they got their start on Growing Pains, like Leonardo DiCaprio. He played the homeless little kid in the janitor's room.
In the 1960s, Walter Mischel and Yuichi Shoda performed an experiment that has turned out to have significant implications for determining who is going to experience lifelong flourishing. In what has now become a famous experiment referred to as the marshmallow test, young kids were seated in front of a desirable food like a marshmallow or a cookie, and then told by the adult that they were going to leave the room, and if the child didn't eat the treat while they were gone, that the child would get 2 treats when the adult returned. What Mischel and Shoda found in their research after testing 966 children as preschoolers and then following them into adulthood was that the amount of time a child was willing to delay gratification in order to get another treat was directly related to their success in thriving as an adult. The results of their work, along with subsequent experiments by contemporary researchers, supports the conclusion that self-control is a greater predictor of success than IQ, social class, emotional stability, or academic opportunities. Fascinating, right? Other words that scientists link with this important trait of self-control are restraint, willpower, and conscientiousness. And while most of us can agree that these are useful personality characteristics to possess, many of us have never heard just how displaying these qualities can impact our happiness later in life. From marital satisfaction to a long lifespan to workplace success, scientists tell us that willpower and self-control are the fundamental traits most closely tied to thriving. And it all started with a simple marshmallow test. So the question becomes, what if you or someone you love is more of an eat the marshmallow right now kind of person? No need to destine yourself to live down by the river in a van just yet. Researchers tell us that self-control is actually a trait that can be developed even if it doesn't come naturally. Just like working out at the gym to get a really great booty, we can work out our self-control muscle to help us live a really great life. And so here are 3 quick ways to start boosting your self-control. Number 1, in their book titled Willpower, Rediscovering the Greatest Human Strength, Roy Baumeister and John Tierney say that practicing one small act of self-control every day will actually produce huge results because improving self-control in one area usually improves it in all areas. In their study, subjects each chose one area of their life to improve, and the researchers reported that those in the fitness program got fitter, those working on studying discipline got more schoolwork done, the people in the money management program saved more money, but here was the most pleasant surprise. They also got better at other things. The students who were studying discipline reported doing physical workouts a bit more often and cutting down on impulsive spending. Those in the fitness and money management program said that they studied more diligently. Exercising self-control in one area seems to improve all areas of our life. And the second tip is to pre-commit to good behavior. And this simply means to have a plan before you get into a triggering situation. Daniel Eckst, in his book, We Have Met the Enemy, Self-Control in an Age of Excess, offers some ideas for how we can pre-plan to exercise self-control. He shares how one woman he knows places her credit card in a container of water in the freezer, thereby requiring a cooling off, or warming up period, if you will, before using it. Or another woman who decided that she was going to wear her ugliest granny underwear on a date to ensure that she wouldn't be tempted to disrobe. Hey, whatever it takes, right? And the last tip, in order to help boost your self-control muscle, is to help someone else out. Just ask the Navy SEALs. Navy SEAL training requires a tremendous amount of self-control and willpower to make it through. And what the SEALs have found is that the men who make it through are often not the most physically gifted. They aren't necessarily the ones with the biggest muscles. they're the ones with the biggest hearts, because self-control isn't selfish. At least 3/4 of the men in each SEAL class typically fail to complete training, and the survivors, according to Eric Greitens, a SEAL officer, have one common quality. He says they have the ability to step outside of their own pain, put aside their own fear, and ask, how can I help the guy next to me? They have courage and grit, but they also have a huge heart, large enough to think about others. Which reminds me of today's guest, Kirk Cameron. The day we recorded this conversation, Kirk and his family were in the mountains getting ready to host a camp for terminally ill kids and their families, just like they have every year for the past 28 summers. It is selflessness in action. And not only that, but as a dad of 6, Kirk is on a mission to help parents and kids around the globe find deeper and more lasting connection. Through his new film called Connect, he's giving a fresh voice to the conversation around technology, social media, and he's offering tremendously useful ideas for how to raise kids who thrive in a digital world. I don't know about you, but helping my kids learn to have self-control in regards to technology is a huge topic in my home. And this conversation with Kirk is both normalizing and inspiring, which is why I can't wait for you to hear it and then go check out his film Connect. Also, listen to the end when you'll hear Kirk tell a super cute story about how he met his wife on the set of Growing Pains. And so without further ado, here's my new friend, Kirk Cameron. Okay, so Kirk, in your new film Connect, you talk about how in your family you have a tradition on Mother's Day where your wife goes out and buys the kids gifts, which I think is such a classic mom thing to do and think it's hilarious. And by the way, I need to mention that you have 6 children, which is impressive in and of itself. But one particular Mother's Day, your wife went out and you guys decided that you'd get all of your kids smartphones. So that decision to get your kids smartphones sparked a bigger journey of discovery for you guys that ultimately led to this idea for a new movie called Connect. And so will you tell me about the moment you realized that you needed to make this movie in order to create conversation around the topic of technology and connectedness?
Yes, I would love to. And, that Mother's Day when all of this got started was really, the tradition is actually to bless my wife, honey, do whatever you want to do. It's Mother's Day. And so, the kids and I usually stay home and we make her favorite dinner, which is this steak au poivre, which is like, I think I'm saying it right. It's French for like pepper steak.
Nice.
And so she usually goes out and spends the day and she's like, getting her hair done or shopping or something. But inevitably she does come back with bags of gifts for the kids. And so this time she had mentioned to me that she wanted to get smartphones for the kids because some of them were older. Some of them were getting to that age where they were going to be asking for them. And sometimes school and sports is inconvenient without some of the social media platforms where they communicate, updates to the schedule and homework and practices and stuff like that. So we went for it this Mother's Day. And at first it was lots of fun. I really hadn't heard of too many horror stories. But we did notice that our kids were having so much fun, a little too much fun, wanting to play games, wanting to chat with their friends, wanting to call and text and everything else. And we had locked down things like the internet and other things that we knew were potentially harmful. But once I started just seeing how much time that they spend, once we started to see the way that their attitude would change if you interrupted them or told them to put down the phone. And then I started hearing stories on the news of what was happening to kids, that just you wouldn't expect these things to happen, but kids were being stalked, kids were being bullied, kids were being targeted through seemingly harmless apps and activities. And that really made me start to look into it. And that's when I knew that I needed to start talking to some experts to really get a crash course on social media and technology and how it is affecting all kids so that I could prepare and equip mine.
And it's such a universal conversation that I feel like all of us parents are like longing to have, and yet we don't really know where to start because we do see all of those stories on TV. And I don't know about you, but when I get together with my friends, without fail, there's one topic that comes up, and that's how we're struggling with how to manage our kids' tech usage. And everyone of us feels guilty that our kids are on devices so much. We're grateful for like the few minutes that we have of focus when our kids are on those devices. And yet we also have this like chronic low grade anxiety that our kids are going to be totally screwed up by our choices around technology.
Right.
So I really appreciate that you are tackling this topic, because from easy access to porn to the way that constant distraction can rewire our brains, it seems to me that we need a fast learning curve in order to really give our kids the best resources to help them thrive. And so, like you said, you've talked with so many experts. What are the biggest concerns and ramifications regarding kids' tech and social media usage that all of us parents need to be aware of?
So that's a great question. And so I'm speaking from the perspective of a father, right? So I'm not a tech expert, but I know to go to people who are, so that I can be better preparing my kids. So I went to a family counselor, a psychologist, a neurosurgeon, and a neuroscientist. I went and spoke with my friend who is a pastor and minister, and then also a technology entrepreneur who actually had a horrible situation go on with his son who was being stalked online, but ended up turning that situation into a very good thing when he created and invented some technology that, in order to track down the predator, he now uses to allow parents to be able to better monitor the kind of internet activity that their kids are involved in. So if your kids are coming up with false usernames and new Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat accounts, he can help you to find that so that you can better understand what your kids are being influenced by. So in the end, the things that I found were things that you would imagine: easy access to porn, like you said, kids just being overexposed to all kinds of information. I think Dr. Kathy Cook, who is a family counselor, opened my eyes to some that I wasn't as aware of. She's saying that there's 5 lies that our culture, our technology culture, is teaching our kids, and just a couple of them are things like they are being taught that the universe revolves around them. As parents, we can wonder, why are our kids so narcissistic? Why do they seem to think that like anything they want, whatever they want, should be given to them, and it needs to be given to them instantly, and they need to have choices, not just one, but many, many choices. And she's pointing out, well, look at their digital world. It's built off of instant gratification, and they get to design their online world so that they can look however they want, sound however they want. They can set up their options any way that they want. They get to design all of their colors and all of their everything. And they never only are given one choice. They have a drop-down menu for their camera, for their Netflix, for their Instagram, for every website. And so they expect a drop-down menu for everything. So when they go to grandma's house and say, well, what are my choices for dinner? And you say chicken, and they're like, what do you mean? I don't want chicken. What are my choices? What are my options?
Wow.
And she's talking about things like kids are believing with all the information they're getting that data is all that they need, and that they don't need what they truly need, which is wisdom. They need mentors. They need not just Siri or Alexa. They need people who have their best interest in mind and access things like God's word, who pray, who love them, who care about them. And these are things that some of us, we take for granted as parents because we didn't have to deal with this kind of technology when we were kids. But our kids are being raised by technology in many ways. And that's why the final takeaway from Connect, I think, is so important and instructive. And we can get to that in a few minutes. But for now, if you want, we can keep talking about some of the concerns and dangers to look out for.
Yeah, I'm curious about your take on social media and all the research that's coming out about how it can increase, especially a young person's risk for depression and anxiety, and also this idea that it makes us feel less content. And so I'm curious if you have any tips for us parents when we see our kids starting to feel less content with their lives and the things that they have? And do you have any ideas for helping them regain a sense of peace or contentment? And I guess the same thing is true for us as parents, right? Like we are just as susceptible to have those same feelings.
Yeah. So Dr. Ian Armstrong, the neuroscientist I spoke to, talked about how our kids are growing up and they have kind of two worlds. They have the real world where, you know, they're face to face with someone talking with them. And then they have this virtual world with these virtual friends and all of these followers and connections. And often kids are spending more time in the virtual world, which really runs by a different set of rules. And when that world goes south, or if it's upended and somehow, you know, somebody makes a joke or something happens to upset your kids, it's not just 4 or 5 friends that might find out about it. It's 400 or 500 or 1,000 who are now mocking your child or making your child feel less than, or they're stupid, or they're fat, or they're dumb, or they're whatever. And they start believing the things that their hundreds and thousands of so-called friends are telling them. And it can lead much more so, the experts are saying, to anxiety and depression, and sometimes even suicide.
Wow.
So in the movie Connect, one of the young people that we talked to actually said that he had a gun to his head. And he ended up not pulling the trigger because his parents pulled into the driveway while he was still trying to figure out exactly how to take the safety off the gun. So these are very real things. You know, combining that with TV and movies and even famous people who are committing suicide now and talking about how they're doing it. And our kids are getting bombarded with this kind of stuff. So all the more reason why it is essential, critical, that we as parents not only understand what the problems can potentially be, but that we're creating a healthy world for our kids to live in our homes, around the dinner table, in the living room, you know, in the car ride to school, wherever we are with our kids. We can't sort of let them go down the wormhole of their virtual world all alone and just leave them there and wait till they come out. Because it's so unhealthy. We need to be fully present with our kids, connected with them. And at the end of the day, that's what I'm hearing from all of the experts is put your own phone down, mom, dad, and be with your kids, connect with them, ask them questions, get involved in their life, talk to your kids, take a walk, play a game, do the things that your grandparents did, the things that you did when you were a kid, and don't let all of their childhood and their innocence be gobbled up by Facebook, Snapchat, and Instagram.
That's so good. I saw an article recently by a teenager, and she was saying that the one thing that she and her friends most want is for their parents to put their phones down and spend time with them. And so would you suggest that while we can help our kids regulate their own tech usage, we need to model it first? We need to be the ones who are regulating ourselves in order to create that atmosphere where our kids can learn from us and experience the fullness of life apart from technology?
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. It wasn't too long ago that I actually broke my phone. I was in Washington, D.C., and I dropped it and it broke and I couldn't use it and there was no way I could get it replaced. And, it was sort of those initial withdrawal symptoms because I use my phone so much to text or to for work and whatever. But after a day, I was like, I want to see how long I can go without using my phone. And there was this sense of peace and calm that I hadn't experienced in a while because your phone is not constantly buzzing in your pocket. You're not constantly checking to see if you've missed something. And while I have a phone now, I use it differently than I used to. And, I'm hearing this from all the experts, and I think it's true. We need to take a break for our own health from too much social media, too much technology. It's so important to have no phone zones, whether that's in the car or maybe it's at the dinner table or it's whenever you're talking to your kids, to put the phone down, turn it off, put it in a box, put it away, and use it as a tool when it's appropriate and helpful. But this sort of impulse use, if we're operating that way, why would we expect our kids not to operate that way? And I think that when we can model it for our kids, and then we can pull them into what we're doing, like, hey, let's go take a bike ride. Hey, let's go take a walk. Hey, let's play a game. Come with me to the store. Let's go get stuff for dinner. Let's make something together. The more that we can do that with our kids, the more that they will appreciate the value of being off technology, that they'll be healthier and we'll have a better relationship with them. Because at the end of the day, the relationship is really what counts. And that's why we called this project Connect. Because there will come a time where you can't take the phone away from your 20-year-old anymore. If she's off at college or he's off on his own, you can't regulate their technology use. But if you have a relationship with them that is full and rich and dynamic, and they know that there's one person in their corner every day for the rest of their life, and it's their mom or it's their dad, then when they run into trouble, you'll be able to speak into their life. When they have a question, they'll come to you. So it's not just about rules and a list of do's and don'ts with technology. It's really about maximizing and emphasizing your relationship with your child, which you just can't have if they're consumed with technology or if we're consumed with it. And that's why it's important to put it down. Yes, there's dangers of pornography, and yes, there's dangers of rewiring their brain, and all of that's real. But there's also the danger of simply not having the needed relationship with your child, and the needed relationships your child needs to have with other peers that are important for them to be successful adults, so that they can hold down a job, so that they can stay married, so that they know how to connect with their own children. Otherwise, they're just little zombie robots who only know how to function with a screen in their face.
I think that's what I appreciate so much about Connect, is that it's such a holistic take on the topic. It's not myopic. It's not like, here are the, 3 things that you need to do. It's about relationship and connection and such a bigger, more full picture of relationship and how to navigate this topic in a really healthy way. And I find it really fascinating that Steve Jobs and Bill Gates raised their kids tech-free, or relatively tech-free. And to be honest, that would be my preference as well. But I know, like you said, that doesn't help our kids develop their own self-regulating practices. And it doesn't help us cultivate a relationship where we can talk about things and where they can make mistakes in a safe place where the ramifications aren't so huge, as opposed to when they're out on their own. But if I'm being honest, as a mom, I have a tendency to be a little extreme in my reaction to my kids' usage of technology. So here's what happens. I'm okay for a little while. They're using their technology, they're using their phones or video games or whatever, and I tolerate it. And then slowly it seems to consume more and more of their time. And then I go all mom freak out mode on them and march the PlayStation up to the garage and ban all social media, right? Because I've let it go too far. And so you have 6 kids and you've talked to so many experts and really have explored a really healthy way of dealing with social media and technology. And so do you have any practical tips that you implement in your house that all of us parents can learn from to help us not get to that freak out moment?
Yeah. Well, I think everyone smiles when they hear you say it. I have the all mom freak out moment and marching off to the garage. I think we all have those, and sometimes I still have those. I've got the proverbial hammer ready to hit the iPhone screen at any moment for any one of my kids that are still in the house. But yes, I think that there are some tips. So turn the phones off at 9 o'clock at night, or whenever is appropriate for the age of your children. Some of your kids might be older, some of them are younger. This is MOPS, so we're talking about little kids, but have time limits. There are apps that you can put on those devices so the kids can learn to say, hey, I've got a half an hour, I've got an hour, I've got 2 hours worth of time. I need to manage it. I don't want to use it all up right now. And there's apps that you can put on to do that. There's a device called Circle with Disney. And this Circle device is a little white box that you can attach to your Wi-Fi in your home. And what it does is it allows you to monitor your kids' internet usage, their social media usage, set time limits. You can pause the internet. You can turn the internet off at night, have it come back on at a certain time. There's all kinds of things that you can do with that to help you monitor. It's not a replacement for good parenting at all, but it's helpful. It's a helpful tool.
Do you check your kids' social media? Or how do you guys navigate that?
For social media?
Yeah.
So one of the things that my wife did, which I thought was just brilliant, is when our kids first got the phones, it's so much easier to start with 0 privileges and then increase them as the kids show responsibility, because then it's exciting for everybody, right? Hey, you're showing more responsibility. Great job. Let's try a little bit more freedom, rather than, hey, you give your kids a phone and you give them all freedom. They're super excited, and then all of a sudden a crisis hits and you're shutting everything down, and then it's World War III with your kids. So what my wife did was we on the parental controls on the phones, we turned off the internet, we turned off the app store, so there was no way for them to get Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook onto their phone. And then when we thought it was appropriate for them to have an account, my wife downloaded those apps onto her phone, not the kid's phone, but her phone. And the kids created an account together with her in the kitchen with the lights on out in the open at the counter. And they would use that for however much time we said that they could together with us. Sort of like teaching your child to drive a car. You don't throw them the keys and say, hey, good luck, hope you don't hurt yourself. We say, hey, why don't you first, sit on my lap and steer the car when you're really little. When you're older, you can drive down the street while I'm in the passenger seat with you, with my hand on the wheel with you, or with my hand on the brake, right? And then eventually, when you show responsibility, you can drive yourself. So same with the apps on my wife's phone. And then eventually, our kids got to the point where they could have an account with and a phone that don't have the level of restrictions or any restrictions, like with my oldest, who's, he's engaged and he's going to get married. I don't want to be monitoring his Snapchat, all right? But we have other kids who don't have access to these things, even in their teenage years, so that we can be there with them to make sure that they're not going to harm themselves.
So smart. That's brilliant.
And at the end of the day, listen, I don't want to be the helicopter parent. I don't want to be the sin police. I mean, that's the last thing in the world I want to do. But I am committed to protecting my kids. I am committed, and my wife is just, passionately devoted to being there with my kids, for my kids, and equipping our kids to be able to be successful, healthy adults. That's what we want more than anything. We're not there to intrude on their freedoms, but we're there to make sure that they only have the freedoms that are good for them. Because the moment of freedom becomes bad for them, that's when a parent needs to step in and know when to close the door on something. And that takes wisdom. Siri can't tell you how old you should be when you get Snapchat. Right? That takes a mom. That takes a dad who knows their kids and has wisdom.
So good. And so if someone's listening right now and they're like, I need to watch this movie, where do they go to get more info and to purchase it?
So you can get it on DVD. You can stream it. You can get it at Walmart. You can get it at online, anywhere you get movies, DVDs. So
excellent.
Wherever. And if you go to connectmovie.com, you can order it there, and it'll give you probably 10 different ways you can order it, or just, Google it, whatever, you'll find it, called Connect Movie with Kirk Cameron, and for sure it'll pop up.
And would you suggest parents watch it with their kids, without? Like, how would you
Yes.
recommend?
I would recommend you watch it with your kids, particularly if you have preteens and teenagers. The little kids probably won't engage too much with it, but preteens and teenagers will, because it's a subject that they're interested in. First of all, so you got that on your side. If you just show them the trailer, they might get a little nervous, like, "Oh no, this means mom's going to shut off my phone. This is terrible. Don't watch this." And that's not what it's about at all. It's about learning to navigate social media and technology together with your kids, so that you can help them be champions and victors when it comes to this stuff, rather than victims of the bad use of technology. So watch it with your teenagers, and it will start a conversation for you, because there are young people there who talk about what happened to them in terms of their social media profiles, how it made them feel, and how they made a big change in their life, and how they feel so much healthier and better now. And you can ask them, what did you think of that girl? What did you think of Rosa? What did you think of Michael and what he said? Could you relate to any of that? Is that stuff true? What do you think of what that doctor said about what's happening to your brain every time that you post something on Instagram and somebody likes it? It's a great conversation starter.
That's awesome. I feel like everyone listening would be really upset with me if we didn't talk about growing pains,
Okay.
because you have to talk about growing pains. I actually had someone text me 2 days ago with a picture of you at an event they were at, and just said, "This was my favorite show ever. Can you believe I get to see Kirk?" So do you have a favorite moment from filming the show?
So I love talking about growing pains, and we were in production for about 6.5 years. And there's so many favorite moments. I remember the waterbed episode where Mike and the family are stuck up in his apartment and they're jumping around in the waterbed, springs all sorts of leaks. I remember the Say No to Drugs episode. I remember so many different episodes, and there were, other actors who got they got their start on Growing Pains, like Leonardo DiCaprio. He played the homeless little kid in the janitor's room who didn't have any place to stay, and so the deceivers sort of adopted him, to all kinds of other actors who were on the show. But I think what I always go back to, as my go-to moment on Growing Pains, that will probably always be my favorite, was the first time that I kissed my wife. And it was actually very funny, because I had met her on the set, I don't know, maybe it was a month or so before, and she was auditioning to play the role of Mike Seaver's girlfriend, and she got the role, and I was I thought she was beautiful. She was so sweet. We shared the same faith, and we were getting to know each other. And the guys that were writing the script wrote in the scene that Mike was in a school play with Kate, and in the play, Mike kissed her. I was freaking out, because I thought, oh no, it's gonna ruin everything. And I'm gonna be so nervous. I'm gonna completely blow my cover here. And so we rehearsed all week without the audience, and every time we got to that part, I would just sort of read in the script, and Mike kisses Kate, and then I would go on to the next line, and I would never actually, go through any of the motions. And then when it came to tape night, the audience was there, and I had to actually kiss her. And so just before they rolled the cameras, I ran into the first aid department behind the set, and I rummaged through the medical kit and got something that I thought might break the ice. And so I found some Anbesol, which is this gum-numbing gel that you use for a toothache. It's like liquid Novocaine. And I put it on my lips like Vaseline. And I went back out onto the set, and I said, "Okay, I'm ready." They said, "Action." We did the scene. I kissed her, and within about 5 seconds, her lips went numb, and she couldn't feel anything. And so she starts wondering, what is this gooey stuff on my lips? Starts trying to wipe it off, and all of a sudden her whole mouth is numb. She can't talk. And so, of course, I walked back onto the set and said, I'm sorry. I should have warned you. That's the reaction that I give to the ladies when I kiss them. and so I will never forget that. And I know it sounds really cheesy, but the truth is, I think that was that was when I set the hook, because we've been married now for 27 years and we have 6 kids.
Oh my gosh, that is an amazing story. And I'm such a sucker for cheesiness. So that is phenomenal. You totally won her over with Anbesol. I love it.
I did. I did. I was 19 years old and we got married when I was 20.
Wow.
And so, and it's been 27 years later, which is something like 270 in Hollywood
Right?
years, right?
Totally. That's impressive. Thank you so much. I just can't wait for our moms to watch Connect. I think it's going to revolutionize so many families. So really grateful for your time.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the time, and thank you for all that you're doing. As parents, I feel like we need to stick together as moms and dads, and to be able to have time like this to talk and explore topics together and share wisdom that we're learning from others is so important, especially now because we really are pioneer parents. Things are different than they were for our parents. We are a guinea pig generation when it comes to all of this technology, so much so that, like you said, Bill Gates and even some of the designers of Facebook are raising their children tech-free. And they say that they have created a bit of a monster that they don't know how to put back in the cage. And they're looking for other people to help. So if you're feeling frustrated, if you're feeling overwhelmed with all of this as you listen, you're not alone. It's normal to feel that way. And we're learning as we go. This is on-the-job training as parents. And I think that if we stick together, and I believe that as we trust God and we put the role of mom and dad at the top of our priority list, above work, above hobbies, above friends, and all of that, I think that we'll find that we're on the right road.
That's awesome. And you're out in front leading the way. So thank you for doing that. Hey, thanks so much for listening today. Make sure to go to my Instagram where I just posted the new cover image of my book that is coming out in April. It's titled Have More Fun, How to Get Unstuck and Start Being Remarkable. And the foreword is written by Bob Goff. Can you guys believe it? I am so excited about it. So go check it out. I make a really weird face in the photo that's on the cover, and I feel a little insecure about it, but between you and I, it's going to be okay. I'm going to work through it. So comment on it and tell me what you think. Now go out and have more fun, and don't come back until you do.